Welcome to our Women's Health Tech Wednesday today. Our episode today is with Anjana. Upcoming is our reminders. Our August 31st symposia is coming up at the end of the month. You can go to the QR code for more information. It is a free registration. And also a reminder of our next Innovator Summit. It's scheduled for end of November. Tickets are now on sale. We will have Insight on in-person event. Again, the QR code for more information. And if you're interested in sponsoring any of HITLAB's events, such as any of the symposia, the monthly symposia, the Innovator Summit coming through, if you're interested in the Breakthrough Alliance, or also sponsoring any of the in-person networking events, and of course, any of the Women's Health Tech Wednesdays sessions. If you're interested in sponsoring, do go to the QR code below. It's very easy to get linked up. So I'd like to introduce our guest today, Anjana Harve. She is definitely a seasoned and very experienced a leader in women's tech, and especially in an area that is not normally has a lot of women involved. So through Anjana's career, she's really navigated very well. And I'm sure you're really going to learn a lot from this session from Anjana and her journey. So Anjana, so happy to have you joining us today. A lot of energy in learning about you coming up to this session. So I'd like to turn it over to you for an introduction so people can get to know you.
Great. Thank you so much, Zina. And first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited to join the discussion today and kind of talk a little bit about sort of what I've learned in my career and kind of opportunities that are out there. So thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. So maybe just a little bit about myself. I have about 25 plus years of experience as I look back on my career over a number of different companies. Spent the beginning part of my career in consulting. So a fantastic foundation, kind of didn't plan my career that way, but I'm glad that I did it. Gave me a really good foundational set of experiences and learnings, if you will. And from there, I moved to the industry and I've kind of since stayed then. So had the opportunity to work across a number of different organizations, handling sort of manufacturing, supply chain operations, as well as the services side of the industry. Most of them being in the sort of the broader healthcare space. So pharma, med device, and healthcare. So it's been a wonderful learning experience across this career journey. And I'd say the common theme, Zina, as I think back on my career, is the commonality amongst all of those is really one of transformation. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I love to drive transformation, look for business outcomes and leveraging sort of digital technology and figuring out ways to help shape business outcomes to that. So that's a huge passion of mine, and I've kind of pursued that as I've gone through my career. And I'd say the other passion that I have is really in building sort of high-performing teams, to really kind of think about how do you build strong teams, how do you really multiply the power of what we can collectively bring to the table rather than any one individual. And that's a lot of things that I've sort of learned and try to experiment and pick up and grow as I've grown through my own career. And just on a personal note, I would say, maybe just to end the kind of the introduction part of this, I have two kids. I have a daughter who's in college and I have a son who's about to go to college, so just graduated high school. And I love to spend a lot of time with my family, love to cook, and I love to travel. So just a little bit about myself as we get started off.
Yeah, fantastic, Anjana. Already I'm very impressed by kind of the breadth of your experience. So it seems to be a common element, success factor that many people have is starting out with consulting. You talked about that breadth of experience, and from other people I've met, it seems like, okay, maybe it's kind of chaotic at first, but when you look back at your career, that seems to be very foundational, because you talked about all of the different breadths of experience you got into before you even got into that connection of healthcare in tech. Yes. So could you talk about a little bit more about that career journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, and you're exactly right, I think it was very foundational at the beginning part with consulting. And really, I would say the best way to describe it, Zina, is it teaches you problem solving on your feet, kind of going into different kind of industries, different problems, because none of your clients are the same. They all have different challenges. And so how do you really think about bringing sort of your skills and methodologies and some of the core fundamental things that you've learned, but applying it in different settings? And so that's really a lot of what I was able to hone in on those skills early part. And I would say, as I think about my journey, a couple of pivotal points, I guess, in that journey. The first one was, I think, my first managerial opportunity that I got a chance to take. So it was actually within consulting itself, a very difficult project that we were on, rather risky, and it wasn't going as well as we were hoping. And I was kind of the newest member of the project. And so on that project, I got the chance to, there was some changes, and I got a chance to actually take on the project manager role and kind of run the project. And that was my first experience of running something or leading an opportunity. Was a bit nervous about taking that because it wasn't a project that was going so well. So I'm like, do I hang my hat on this and should I take it on? A lot of risk that goes with it, but a lot of potential upside if I can do well and be able to get done. And so spent a lot of time thinking, talking to my husband, and finally said, you know what? Life is about taking the risks and taking chances, and I've got to push myself. And if I don't, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, and I'm sure I'll figure something out as I go forward. And so I'm really glad. And that I felt was a really pivotal moment in kind of exploring that opportunity of kind of leading. So that was maybe the first one I kind of think about. The other one I would say is, as I kind of progressed in my career, I was kind of going down a linear path of, hey, I get to this, get a bigger role and a bigger role, and I try to work my way in expansion. And I learned soon that it's sometimes not the straight line that you have to kind of take. It depends on opportunities that come along your way and being open to learning different things, taking lateral moves. And so I took a couple of different, I was a business unit CIO and decided to take operational roles, compliance roles, so different kind of roles that really helped me round out my skills and position myself really well for my next opportunity, which happened to be sort of a public sitting CIO for a publicly traded company. And so prepared me well. And it forced me, and I'm glad I was open to kind of taking those lateral moves to kind of getting there. So I'd say lots of different pivotal moments as I think of my own career and kind of how it shaped me. And I think being open to different ways of navigating a career has been important.
You know, it's so interesting because part of advancing in careers, I find, is somewhat serendipitous, but also if you're in that mindset, you can pause a little bit and be a bit mindful about what choices you make, and ultimately it might be a few years down the line where you figure out, okay, that's how it connected the dots. But I think one thing that's really maybe more critical in industry today is being a little bit more intentional about how you're tracking your career journey. So as part of your getting into a career in technology and that digital leadership, what inspired you to get into technology? And also, ultimately, you know, you are a woman who's in high profile roles. You said you also were, you know, kind of work to upskill to be kind of that business partner. And really making it not just doing the job, it's really aiming for those outcomes that really make a difference. So you can talk a little bit about going into industry, your transition into healthcare, and what you had to do to be ready for that and transition into that. And, you know, the challenges that you encountered as you were kind of making those decisions to come to where you are.
Yeah. So maybe you asked me first and kind of what got me into technology. So I'll kind of start my way from that part of your question. Not sure I really fully thought I was actually had two careers in front of me when I was making the decision where to go, which college path to take. And one was actually very different, I would say. One was being a lawyer because I came from a family of a lot of lawyers and judges. So that was a natural path I think I was about to take. And then I learned a little bit about computer science and I ended up taking it. And I think it was the problem solving, my affinity towards that, or excitement about kind of how do I solve things, which I think there's a little bit in both of those if I take a step back and think through it. But I decided I wanted to take a slightly different path than perhaps what the rest of my family had taken, and try solving skills through technology. So that was sort of what got me into computer science engineering at the early part during college education. And from there, I would say, Zina, it's I got to see very clearly how technology can make a fantastic difference in how you drive business outcomes. And I got a chance to touch every aspect of the business, and it's very, very different, whether it's sales and marketing, whether it's R&D, manufacturing. Technology has such a fundamental way of shaping what a company does, whether it's automation or even driving top line sales. I think there's a really so much that can be done in rethinking and reimagining how technology can shape the way a company operates, the company goes to market, all of those things. So I think observing that and getting the opportunity in one of my early careers after I moved to the industry, I got a chance to touch every part of the business because we were transforming the entire company. And so it was, again, another foundational experience of really learning across how does a business run, what's important to the business. And I started realizing, again, technology is super important. I'm passionate about it. That's who I am. But there's a bigger purpose, a reason why we're here, the company's mission, and how can I help shape that mission and the purpose of the company through leveraging technology as a means towards helping sort of solve those things. So that was what started getting me to really hone in much more on focus on business outcomes, focus on what's important, and then kind of think about, so I always try to wear my first hat is really look at the business and then kind of think about my second hat and kind of my functional expertise, if you will, bring that to the table so you can get the best of both. So those were kind of the parts that I think following that, doing my MBA, I think also really helped. It's kind of reinforced a lot of my thinking and getting a more formal education or kind of looking at it from the lens of an MBA really helped me, again, solidify and kind of broaden my perspectives on how to leverage digital technologies and kind of leverage it for shaping the outcomes of a company.
You know, that's so important because many of us, if we're too hyper focused on our own function,
yeah,
you're just kind of ticking a box, but is it really making a difference? The other risk is you start working on something that actually the company is not focused in that area per se, or maybe it's not a priority, and you end up limiting yourself on for that reason. So that's really great advice. It's problem solving, but are you problem solving against what's important for the company on that strategy and having that broad experience? So in terms of kind of, you just mentioned about, deciding to get an MBA and you're upskilling as well, but let's pause for a second and talk about, you mentioned you had 2 kids. So how did you navigate your life balance and your work-life balance or work integration into life, especially, having that maternity leave time and, managing that leave, as well as everything you needed for making sure you're there for your kids and everything that's going on. And at the same time, not impacting your career, because I suppose at that time, maybe a little bit less so now, but definitely then, you're kind of out of sight, out of mind sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say, as I reflect back, Zina, it wasn't easy. And I would say a guilt trip all along the way, I would say. And maybe more. I think I've learned a lot. I think you learn as you grow in your own and learn from your life experiences. But the early part of my career, I actually tried to do even more to prove to the world that I was equal. And even though I had to juggle all of these things, and I probably put a bar for myself that I probably shouldn't have, or set a standard too high, which was not needed because I needed to be my authentic self and bringing it to work. But I wasn't as knowledgeable at the time, or I didn't kind of took it in a very different way. So I really worked hard to kind of make sure that at least at work, that no matter what, that I would be showing up to work, if you will, at the same way as all my other colleagues were. And I'll talk a little bit of sort of, I've changed a lot now. I think I've become a bit wiser as I've kind of gone through, learned that I have to be showing up in a different way as a leader. I have more responsibility in kind of not making that happen to others and my colleagues and kind of shaping it. But again, early part was definitely a lot of guilt, I would say, in kind of taking care of the 2 kids. And talking, the way I try to handle it or practically deal with it was really talk to a lot of people, understand what's important, engage my family very, very deeply into everything that I've done. And I think the best way I would summarize how I've been able to kind of overcome those is I've realized that quality is more important than quantity. Yes, I absolutely have spent less time with my kids, but I'm really, really close to both of them. And I will say now that they're much older, both my daughter and my son, they can now vouch for, hopefully I wasn't a bad mom and they turned out well. And in fact, they tell me they're really proud that they were able to kind of see me juggle all of this, because my daughter wants to have a family as she grows up and wants to be that. And so having seen me go through it actually has been a very positive influence on her, which again, at the time I did not know, but I'm glad I did. And so that it's been positive. And I think the other way I've tried to balance this work life, I would say, Zena, is really bringing my family into work, as in integrating both. That was one of the things I learned during my MBA. It's all about integration. And so showing the kids what's happening at work. Every job I changed, I brought them into the decision-making process. So they could be a part of saying, should mom go and pick this job? Is it the right thing to do? What does the company do? And getting to know the company, taking them to the office, taking them to things that kind of get them bought in. And so that way it's not, even if I'm working very hard, they know why I'm working or what I'm doing. And I think as much as possible, I think that integration helps to kind of not have two separate compartmentalized parts of the life that you're trying to manage and trying to integrate the two. So those are a few things that sort of come to mind as I reflect on balancing, but it's not easy, which is why I feel much more of a responsibility as a leader today that I have to do my part to help others to be able to navigate this in a much better manner and not kind of how I felt at the beginning part of my career.
Yeah, I think it's amazing reflection and something that's always tough. You talked about kind of the guilt aspects, and the guilt goes both ways. But I think that integration you talked about is pretty powerful reflection for everyone. And you mentioned about how you would do it differently now, and with people trying to understand and how you show up in the office. That's a good segue into diversity. So you mentioned about high-performing teams. Everyone has different needs. Everyone comes from a different background. And that for diversity can be strength. So what's been your experience and your view on building diverse teams?
Absolutely, hugely important, Zena. I would say it's both the diversity of thoughts and different perspectives, whether it's gender, it's race, it's different kinds of an introvert versus an extrovert. I see diversity in many different types of fashions, bringing the diverse thinking, but also having an inclusive environment to actually unlock that. Because just having a diverse set of team members is not enough to actually unlock or bring the best out of people. So you really need to foster an environment where people can be their own selves, can challenge each other, but hopefully in a healthy way to get the right outcome. And helping nurture such an environment is really important. And so for me, a lot of it has been kind of role modeling it, kind of ensuring, because for me, trust comes only if there's trust can you actually have a safe environment. So what can you do to have a speak up culture, a place where people can be their own self and not feel like being judged or are not able to bring their best self in. So having that trusted environment, fostering that, a learning environment, because part of trust comes what happens when you fail, right? That's what we all observe. When things are going great, it's all wonderful. But the time that it doesn't work well, how do we treat each other? How do we support one another? And so having that sort of an environment that's nurturing learning and is okay and accepting of it's okay to have mistakes, but we're here to support each other and learn from it. I think role modeling all of those things are really important to bring that kind of, foster that kind of an environment. I've done a lot of sort of ERG forums, which I found really helpful actually to have the ERG forums to have a safe space for women to talk, for men allies to come in and kind of support one another. And that's been very, very successful. And I've really found that we're able to talk about topics that normally we were not able to speak about. How do you advocate for yourself? How do you promote yourself and not feel guilty about those things? Sometimes we do. I know I've felt it. So how do you encourage and be a supportive network with one another? So lots of ways I think that we can kind of foster that inclusive environment within an organization. And I'll also maybe use this opportunity to give a shout out to a nonprofit that I'm part of called T200, started by women CIOs to be there as a supportive network for one another. It's almost 260 women CIOs strong now, which is great. And it's a wonderful network, very supportive, very helping one another, and also looking out for how can we promote more women. And I think we all play a role in helping each other and to bring more women into leadership positions and CXO positions. And so it's been very, very, I've been grateful to be a part of such a warm and supportive network and helping one another. So I think there's a lot of things that it's going to take a village to really help foster these kinds of environments to help more women. I think we all need to do our part in supporting that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about ERG and this diversity and really coming back from different levels. So do you, and I think that trust you spoke about is so important, because that's how you get people to thrive and open up and kind of work towards working at the top of their potential. And ultimately, we get business outcomes because our people are thriving. Mm-hmm. And that's so important. I think you're a wonderful example of an empowering leader, because this is what it's all about, I think. And thank you for that, that vision and that reflection and what you've been able to accomplish. So if you look at vision for the future of women in technology, and you talked about how things have changed and are a little bit different now than they were before. So what do you think has changed, and what do you believe can be done now and versus in the past, and your lessons from there? What would you tell your younger self if you were kind of just starting out? So like your daughter, for example.
Yeah. So I think a lot has changed, without a doubt. As I look at my own career, it's changed from the day I started to where it is here. There's a lot more women who are really making amazing trailblazing pathways and leading many companies. So a lot has changed, I'd say, but there's still more to be done. It is not enough that when you look at C-suites, when you look at the CEOs of companies, when you look at boards, there's not enough representation of women. And so that really still bothers me. I think there's a lot has been done, which is fantastic, but I don't think we can pause and wait. And I think we need to, again, as I said, do our part in really helping bring more women in. And a part of that, I would say, Zina, is helping to change the way we operate as companies, right? So it's not easy to make those changes. So how do you kind of think about leadership, redefining leadership? Because a lot of times it's still male-oriented characteristics that are being looked at to kind of promote people. And so how do we change that? Because you need all different kinds of attributes that come together to form what a true, good, strong leader can be. And so that can be a big part of what we're doing. We can be looking at sort of workplace norms and kind of changing those, flexibility, hybrid working, because many times you find roles and it's hard to take that because you can't relocate your entire family, or you're juggling multiple careers with your partner. It's very, very hard. So kind of different ways that I think companies can be very open to giving those things, I think, are very, very helpful to also promote this. And I would say your last question there was kind of what advice would I give to my younger self or to youngsters? I would say a lot. I would say my own learned, be curious. Be a learner, because at the end of the day, the value you bring is kind of your thinking process, etc. So be hungry for learning. I would say that would be huge, sort of as I look back, and take risks. I think I took risks, but I probably could have taken even more. It is, even if there's a failure, it's okay. Don't blame yourself, because actually, if you don't fail, that means you're doing something wrong. You're not actually pushing yourself, and also market yourself, advocate for yourself to kind of say, here's the kinds of things in a humble way. Have humility, but be able to speak to what you've done. So those are the kinds of things I would say as I look back on my younger self on what to do differently.
That's absolutely fantastic, Anjana. I think so much richness in this time that we've had with you, which has gone very fast. So I would recommend, listening to it again and getting out those sparks of richness from the conversation, because I think there's a lot there. Especially as you're going through your career, or maybe you're in a slump, really rethink about how you can shape it and navigate it in a way that's productive and meaningful and thoughtful, at the same time being who you are, being yourself. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Anjana. It's been such a joy to have you join us at the HITLAB Women's Tech Wednesday today.
Thank you again. I really appreciate this opportunity.